On October 14, 2012, millions watched as skydiver Felix Baumgartner soared to the edge of space, took a tiny leap, and then free-fell approximately 120,000 feet to Earth. During his descent, he not only broke the sound barrier, but also set a series of world records. However, this performance wasn't from NASA or SpaceX. A closer look reveals the familiar Red Bull logo. Of course, this is just one of countless examples of Red Bull's extreme and unconventional marketing strategies. They are behind motorcycle jumps from 10-story buildings, snowboarding down an active volcano, not to mention owning numerous racing, soccer, and esports teams. So how did a simple energy drink, which started as a little-known pharmaceutical syrup, become not only one of the biggest disruptors in the beverage industry, but also one of the most brilliantly marketed products ever? By the end of 2022, the global energy drink industry was valued at approximately $90 billion, and sitting on the caffeine throne was Red Bull, a company that in 2021 alone sold over 9.8 billion cans in 172 countries, more than one can per person on the planet. Yet, despite this, Red Bull began from the most humble and unbelievable beginnings. He was born in rural Thailand to parents who were duck farmers and fruit sellers. The family was very poor and couldn't afford a formal education for their children. Therefore, Chilio grew up working on the farm with little prospect of success. However, when his parents sent him to Bangkok to work with his brother as a pharmaceutical sales representative, he worked extremely hard and saved enough money to open his own small business in 1956, TC Pharmaceutical Industries. Initially, the business only sold imported medicines, such as antibiotics. However, at that time, Japanese pharmaceutical companies began producing herbal syrups labeled as energy drinks. These quickly became popular and were imported into Thailand. After nearly 10 years of running TC Pharmaceutical Industries, Chilio decided to create his own version of this energy drink. He realized that the existing products on the market were quite expensive and targeted the wealthy. Coming from a poor background, he understood that it was the working class who needed energy the most. Construction workers, farmers, manual laborers who needed constant focus and energy. After analyzing the formulas of other beverages on the market, Chilio created a similar drink containing caffeine, vitamin B, and a compound called taurine. But what truly set his product apart was the addition of a large amount of sugar, creating a more appealing flavor and providing extra energy. He named the drink Krating Daeng. In Thai, Daeng means red, symbolizing perseverance. Krating doesn't mean cow, but refers to the gaur, a relative of the water buffalo and the world's largest wild cattle. The reason for choosing this name was that Chilio wanted the brand to be associated with strength and power. However, his product wasn't an immediate success. At that time, products from Japan and South Korea dominated the market. But the decision to focus on rural and provincial areas of Thailand, rather than major cities like Bangkok, proved to be a wise choice. To begin, Chilio gave away free drinks to long-working truck drivers who needed to stay alert, promoting the product as a stimulant to boost energy and concentration. The product gradually spread through word of mouth and became popular among the Thai working class. From the initial proceeds, Chilio began sponsoring Muay Thai matches, the most popular martial art in Thailand and an important part of the country's culture. This not only helped the product gain recognition, but also created an association with high energy and strength. This was a brilliant strategy because most other energy drinks at the time were quite generic, while from the beginning, Chilio focused on building a brand, making his drink a symbol of perseverance among the working class. By 1980, the product had achieved great success throughout Thailand. However, it was a chance encounter with an Austrian businessman selling toothpaste that transformed the drink into a multi-billion-dollar global empire. Although Chilio was the first to create the drink that would later be known as Red Bull, it was a man named Dietrich Mateschitz who helped make the business what it is today. Dietrich studied international trade at the Vienna University of Economics. However, amidst parties, travel, and the pursuit of women, it took him 10 years to graduate. Despite this, he was always known for his bold and imaginative ideas. After graduating, he worked and gradually rose to become the international marketing director of a German company called Blendax, which manufactured products such as skin creams, shampoos, and toothpaste. This job required Dietrich to travel extensively around the world, meaning long days and nights at airports and on flights. During a particularly exhausting trip from Europe to Thailand for an important meeting, he felt so drained that he went into a local shop and asked if they had anything to help him stay alert. It was there that he discovered Chileo's Krating Dang energy drink. Dietrich tried it and within minutes felt energized, even overcoming jet lag. He became a regular user, but at the time it was only available in Thailand. Soon after, Dietrich read in the newspaper that the highest taxpayer in Japan owned an energy drink company. This made him realize the product's popularity in Asia, while in the West, there was almost nothing similar. In fact, Dietrich was starting to feel bored with his job at Blendax. So, he made a bold decision, quit his high-paying job, and approached Chilio, proposing a business partnership. Dietrich's plan was to bring this energy drink to the international market and introduce it to European consumers. After some persuasion, the two decided to partner, each contributing $500,000 of their savings. They agreed that Dietrich would run the business, while Chilio would continue to focus on the product. Each held 49% of the shares, with the remaining 2% belonging to Chilio's son. Dietrich's first major decision was to establish a new company called Red Bull, a simpler and more memorable name than the literal translation of Red Gower. And so, in 1984, Red Bull was officially founded in Dietrich's homeland, Austria. However, before launching, they conducted market research to see how European customers would react to the product. The feedback was terrible. Test groups said the drink tasted awful, and market research concluded it was too unhealthy and unappealing. But the two founders of Red Bull strongly believed in their idea and persevered. They made several important changes based on feedback, such as adding carbonation to the product and switching to a sleek silver can design that looked premium and distinct from the competition. Dietrich also believed that to create a premium feel, the product had to have a premium price. Therefore, they priced it almost double that of other carbonated soft drinks. This was a very risky move, but it later became a key factor in the company's success. They also decided to use the famous slogan, "Red Bull gives you wings," to convey that the product provided energy, focus, and potential. This slogan later caused controversy, but by the time it was 1987, Red Bull was finally ready to launch in the West. On April 1st, 1987, Red Bull officially launched in Austria. To project a premium image, the product was initially sold at luxury ski resorts in Austria. Initially, Red Bull had a very small team, consisting of just one secretary and a 6-person sales team. With an extremely limited marketing budget, Dietrich knew he couldn't afford expensive television commercials or extravagant campaigns like other beverage companies. Instead, he employed creative and low-cost marketing strategies. They approached popular, influential, and strong-willed university students. These students were given free crates of Red Bull and driven Mini Coopers decorated with giant Red Bull cans on the roof around campus. They were also paid to host parties where Red Bull was distributed for free. The idea was that these popular students would shape the purchasing habits of their friends and those around them. Red Bull even hired pretty girls as Red Bull girls to hand out free drinks at universities. Meanwhile, the sales team, called Musketeers, donated free coolers to bars and encouraged bartenders to use Red Bull as an ingredient in cocktails, making the product a mix for alcoholic drinks. Red Bull also left empty cans in bars and nightclubs so people would constantly see the logo and be curious to try it. All these tactics were successful. Red Bull sold over 1 million cans in its first year. However, financially, they were still losing money because they had given away so many free products as part of their marketing strategy. But Dietrich understood that investing in the brand, especially in the early stages, would yield long-term benefits. And he was right. In the second year, sales doubled to 2 million cans. In the third year, they reached 4 million cans. Red Bull spread throughout Europe, and at one point in Germany, demand was so high that they couldn't produce enough to meet it. Despite strong growth, engaging in mass advertising, such as television commercials, remained a very expensive option. Dietrich had always loved extreme sports and realized that very few large companies sponsored such events, for example, cliff jumping. Sponsoring extreme sports helped Red Bull gain recognition not just as an energy drink, but as a lifestyle. Red Bull gradually became associated with daredevils and adrenaline-fueled activities. By 1997, Red Bull was ready to launch in the US market. However, by then, the energy drink market had become a $1.7 billion industry with many more competitors. Unlike other soft drink rivals such as Coca-Cola, Red Bull did not have a patented secret formula. All ingredients were clearly listed on the can. Initially, Red Bull only offered a single flavor and often performed poorly in taste tests. Yet, despite all this, Red Bull sales continued to grow. In an interview, Dietrich was asked why he didn't try to create a product with a better flavor. He replied that Red Bull has never revolved solely around the product itself, but rather built a brand around the experience. At its core, Red Bull has never aimed to be just a beverage company, but a storytelling company. The goal is to draw customers into a growing legend rather than trying to cram a product into their lives. To achieve this, the company has strived to align itself with an ever-growing collection of events and performances that draw customers to the brand. Red Bull spends more on marketing than most other companies, but instead of simply running ads about why you should buy the product or sponsoring a single event, Red Bull acquires entire sports teams, builds in-house communications companies, and organizes world-class events. It all started with Austrian Formula One racing legend Gerhard Berger, who became Red Bull's first sponsored athlete in 1989. Today, the company sponsors over 500 athletes, daredevils, and adventurers, spanning from soccer and ice hockey to Formula One racing and esports. Interestingly, this also opens up other revenue streams for the company. For example, they earn money from prize money and sponsorships in Formula One racing, providing additional funds for reinvestment in marketing. This long-term strategy is extremely effective. For instance, owning a team like the New York Red Bulls means that whenever the media or fans discuss the team, Red Bull is naturally mentioned and deeply ingrained in people's minds. The company even created its own sporting events. Flugtag, created in 2000, is a German word meaning flying day. In this event, Red Bull created hundreds of teams worldwide to compete using homemade flying machines to see how far their creations could fly. The current record is 258 feet. By creating events where the product can be served, Red Bull's brand story can be fully deployed. Red Bull once again turned expenses into successful revenue streams. Beyond sports, Red Bull also sponsors arts and music events such as Lollapalooza and Austin City Limits. And of course, by 2012, the company had sent daredevils to the edge of space for free-fall jumps at speeds exceeding 800 miles per hour. Although it took years of planning and cost tens of millions of dollars, it was entirely worth it. The YouTube video of the event set a world record for the number of simultaneous live viewers and garnered over 120 million views. Immediately afterward, the company's global sales increased by 13%. When Red Bull creates memorable events or sets world records, they are often talked about or revisited long afterward, providing a stable, long-term return on investment. But this is the most interesting and unique part of Red Bull's strategy. In all the events and performances the company organizes, they almost never mention their beverage product. For example, in Felix Baumgartner's record-breaking jump, most companies would probably ensure that when he landed, he would be seen drinking a can of Red Bull. But that wasn't the case. Because Red Bull's advertising doesn't feel like advertising. They focus on brand recognition rather than direct sales. They try to create something genuinely engaging so that the audience would naturally associate the brand with the extraordinary. In a world bombarded with advertising and sales pitches, this subtle approach was highly effective. It didn't diminish the value of the performance, didn't make us feel like we were watching an advertisement, but rather like we were watching something amazing from a company that happened to also sell energy drinks. The truth is, Red Bull isn't really a beverage company, but a marketing company. And thanks to that, they were able to position Red Bull as a premium lifestyle product. Ironically, the complete opposite of how it started in Thailand for the working class. Red Bull started as the cheapest energy drink, and now it's one of the most expensive. The formula has remained virtually unchanged. That's the power of excellent marketing and branding. As a result, today, in some countries, Red Bull holds over 80% of the energy drink market share. Since 1987, over 100 billion cans have been sold worldwide. However, you can't become number one in the energy drink industry without some controversy. Red Bull has been banned in many countries for years, most famously in France, when a teenager died after drinking multiple cans of Red Bull during a basketball game. Understandably, there was a lot of concern. There was no evidence that Red Bull caused the death, but it still sparked accusations that the caffeine content in the product was too high and that some other ingredients might not be as safe as the company claimed. However, in 2008, the full version of Red Bull was reintroduced to the market in France, after the company successfully argued that there was insufficient evidence to show the ingredients were harmful. Of course, it wasn't exactly healthy, but it wasn't dangerous enough to warrant a ban. In 2009, in Germany, Red Bull Cola was found to contain a very small amount of cocaine, causing several German states to withdraw the product from the market. But again, after further research, it was discovered that the amount was so small that you would have to consume an almost unimaginable quantity to feel any effect, so the product was reinstated. In 2013, Red Bull was sued again for false advertising related to the slogan, "Red Bull gives you wings." To be fair, no one actually expects to sprout wings and fly. This lawsuit seems to have been an attempt to obtain compensation. However, the plaintiffs argued that because Red Bull did not deliver a clear improvement in physical function, it was false advertising. Ultimately, Red Bull had to pay $13 million to settle the lawsuit. To this day, all of this seems a bit harsh on Red Bull. But in reality, the biggest controversy surrounding Red Bull is something many people in the West don't even know about. In 2012, the heir to the Red Bull fortune, Chalio's nephew, was accused of speeding in a Ferrari and running over and killing a police officer. It was later reported that he did not appear in court, but fled the country. Despite seemingly abundant evidence against him, the case was not pursued to completion. In Thailand, this was seen as a blatant example of how the super rich and powerful are above the law and can get away with it. This led to headlines like, "Red Bull heir shows how to get away with killing a police officer in Thailand." and even calls to boycott Red Bull. To be fair, this heir to the fortune wasn't directly involved in running the company, but this was certainly a stain on the perfect image that Red Bull had spent so much money building. However, Chileo, the original creator of Red Bull, didn't live to see it happen. He passed away just months before the incident in March 2012, at the age of 88. At the time of his death, he was the third richest person in Thailand, with an estimated net worth of $5 billion. And to this day, co-founder Dietrich remains the richest person in Austria. That's because Red Bull is still a privately held company. The founders never had to sell much of their stock, as they had very high profit margins and could continuously reinvest profits back into the business. Therefore, both became extremely wealthy. In fact, there are several lessons we can all learn from Red Bull. First, Red Bull proves that sometimes you don't need to invent something completely new. You can bring an existing product to a new market or customer group and achieve great success by creating your own unique identity. Second, it's clearly a very effective strategy to find a product with low production costs, then invest heavily in marketing to create a premium feel and brand image, allowing you to sell at a higher price. This yields large profit margins, generating a huge cash flow to continue investing in marketing, thereby creating a positive growth cycle. According to some estimates, Red Bull only costs about 9 cents to produce a can, but sells for $1.79 or more. And finally, Red Bull reminds us that the best marketing isn't about running ads like everyone else. It's about doing something creative and unique. The biggest lesson from Red Bull is, don't just sell a product, sell a feeling, sell an image. If you found this story interesting and want to explore more business strategies behind billion-dollar empires, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next videos. Every week, we'll bring you brand stories, business secrets, and perspectives that not everyone tells. Leave a comment below if you want us to analyze any other brands next. See you in the next video.